Welcome to the Ailm Practice Education Series in partnership with Firm Media, delivering concise and impactful insights for aesthetic and specialty medical practices. Your host, Chris Solhonik.
Today we have a super special guest, Patrick O'Rourke from Practice Quotient. We're super excited to have him on. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. I am excited to be here. I appreciate you having me here because now you get to hear about all the wonderful, cool things that I do.
Super excited about that. You're always fun to be around, whether it's dinner, a trade show, or on a podcast. So this will be really great for the listeners, and I hope everybody enjoys it as much as I think I'm going to. Patrick, do me a favor. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you ended up in this space.
Okay. So I am the founder and CEO of a firm called Practice Quotient. People call it PQ, but it's like intelligence quotient, practice quotient. It's a conceptually math thing. At any rate, what our firm does, the technical term for it is dental network managed care analytics, contract strategic guidance. But that does not fit on a business card, really. And so most people just say PPO analysis and negotiation. And then they're like, what does that mean? Well, what that means for the clients and in the provider community is that, are they, if they're in network, the whole idea is that the insurance company goes to the provider and they say, usually you charge $100 for this service. Well, if you give us a discount, right, let's say 30%, then we will give you the promotional consideration of putting you on our website directory and routing our members, i.e. patients in the provider parlance, to your practice. And so if you're in network and you do this and there's some other restrictions, but don't worry about that fine print stuff. This is the basic premise of how it works. I'm from the insurance business directly, and people are like, well, what does that mean, Pat? Well, I helped build dental insurance companies. I worked my way up and became a vice president of another dental insurance company. I know more about insurance and financial risk than just dental, just to be clear. But, I'm in the dental world, or even in the insurance world, I guess I'm kind of known as a dental dork. So I still identify as somebody from the insurance business, regardless of how some of my colleagues on the other side feel. They were not all tickled pink to hear that I opened up this firm. What we're trying to do as a company is to bridge the gap, which I've been saying for years, and I think has become a little cliched, but ultimately the providers and the payers need each other. All right. So without a network, you don't have anything to sell. Insurance companies, all my friends there, hi. And the providers do need new patients, and patients will go in network. And so, but as much as they need each other, their financial interests are dynamically opposed. And so what our firm does in a nutshell is that we come in and we become the agent for the provider, and then we make sure that it's equitable, right? And so by equitable, I don't mean that we're ripping off insurance companies, all right? Again, all my colleagues on the other side of the ball do like to listen to these, and I do appreciate that. We still get a big discount, okay? And so, but the object of the game is it fair? And so the providers really need our philosophy, and this is going to sound a little crazy, Chris, is that our clients need to cover their overhead. Their business overhead is typically 65% of their business. If you include the doctor's salaries, which you should because their family really wants you to, right? And so that's our public position. We'd prefer if they were profitable because they're businesses. Every practice is a little different, and so you have to do the math, and that's how I'm trained. We're AMOS ASI partners, which is the American Association of Oral Maxillofacial Surgeons. Shout out to AMOS, and have been for many years. That's how you and I have met. And we also take on more top-tier dental practices, dental groups, endodontists, anybody who's submitting dental claims. If you've been there for 30 years and you have the best reputation and you don't need a discount, right? Does that make sense? Somebody who's been doing this for 20 years and is, their caliber of care is clearly better than somebody who just graduated last summer, like no disrespect to Dr. Rookie. And then it's up to each of the carriers and the payers what they value they put on. Really in a nutshell, like our job is to be transparent with each side, but the provider community speaks Japanese and the payer community speaks Portuguese. So we're fluent in both. And then we just put it all together with the numbers, and then we say, here you go. Here's where the market is. To I don't want to mention anybody specifically.
Here's the exchange rate.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've given our listeners your background. You have a deep wealth of knowledge about this specific subject. It's why I was excited to have you on the show. The essence of our show is that we want practice owners and administrators to be able to listen to the show and take actionable information back to their practice. So the format is I'm going to ask you these 3 questions. You and I have already discussed the questions. The idea there is just to make sure that we're drawing out the best answers to get people the information they need. At the end, I'm going to ask you for your Ailm Essential Insight, which is one key takeaway that you'd like to leave our listeners with. So we're going to try to be off the show in the next 20 minutes or so. I'm going to dive in. You ready for that?
I think I'm ready. I have my seatbelt buckled.
So yeah, buckle in, seatbelts fastened. All right, question number 1. Many dental practices struggle to determine whether they should be in network or out of network or a mix of. How should practices evaluate the best approach?
Excellent question. Well said. And so traditionally, there's been 2 schools of thought, the provider community and the dental specifically. So you have, like, on one side of the spectrum, you have fee for service only, which is we don't participate in any plans. They're not any plans. So that's one side. On the other side of the spectrum, traditionally, there's been PPO office. And so the marketing flag, to put it in your parlance, is over here, right? We're just not in any plans, period. Over here, it's like, yeah, we're in all the plans, and they have to kind of make it up with volume because they're such a heavy discounter. And so that's really what it is. So you're exchanging a discount. And so there's only 3 reasons a provider is going to discount their services. Number 1 is to avoid empty chair time. That's a good reason. I'll buy that. An empty operatory makes a whoosh sound, like money getting flushed down the toilet. And, that's a good reason. I'll buy that. The second reason is that there's a marketing component to it. Like I mentioned, put on their website. Dozens of other names if you're in a metropolitan area. Now, if you're in a rural area, much more powerful, and then the insurance companies have very large marketing engines and are going to drive folks in network. It is in their interest to do so. This doesn't make them bad people. They're trying to reward their network providers and maintain a cost of care. It's not just about reducing it, but it's also about keeping it predictable, to be fair. So I'm always fair to both sides. And that's why, you want to have a network and you want to know what your cost is in order to predict it. So that's when insurance companies are, it's just math. And so the second reason is there's a marketing component to it. Now, it's not free marketing. You're spending $40,000 to get 60. Now, I'm not the marketing guy. That's you. Let's say, hey, marketing guy, it's, if we gave you $40,000, could you replace that patient population? I'm not Chris, but I bet Chris goes, yeah, bet your sweet butt. All right. So at any rate, there's a marketing component to it, but it's really outsourced marketing if you think about it. Right. And then the third reason, and this is the good reason, Chris, it's for referrals. So there's empirical evidence that demonstrates if you put yourself on sale, give a discount, and you bring in a cost-conscious consumer, and they come in, they have an amazing patient experience, and then they refer to their friends, coworkers, church congregation, etc. Now, those people are coming in because you have a terrific staff, you convenient location, they care who puts fingers in their mouth, they trust the endorsement of the influencer in their life. Doc has the best chairside manner in all of their region, whatever. Who cares? As long as they're coming at full fee. All right. So, and then over here, you're having a harder time because of the number of providers that are participating, at least on some plans. Now, in the middle, finding the right business partners is what we help clients do. And so it's not about, you don't have to be on all the plans. You don't have to discount all the time. And all the insurance companies are not all the same. And so they go after different market segments. There's a lot of differences actually between them. And so which of these carriers are the right fit for you, individual client? One plan that's very large in this country and that plan could make up 30 to 50% of the practice. So, and so that's why choosing your business partners is crucial, because if that carrier, once they get over 50%, then they're going to crush you. Don't shoot the messenger.
Sure. You know what I like about that answer is the whole time you were talking, I was thinking to myself, so there's not one size fits all. And then you said that, which I think years ago, there was a lot more of the one size fits all solutions that were being passed around the industry. And I think hyper customization, or at least customization, is becoming more and more prevalent. And I appreciate that you're one of the people that are doing that, because that requires true consulting.
Well, that's very kind of you.
Yeah.
I don't look at it very differently than, a financial strategy. One of the reasons why I got into the business was that there was a lot of folks that they were just getting burned. It wasn't fair. And so we're just leveling the playing field. And if that hurts anybody's feelings, and
Same reason I started a marketing agency. I was working at a very large agency, pioneer agency in the plastic surgery market. And I was the only one at the agency that had experience. I was in the music business for 10 years, as you know, and in the music business, and I worked with some very high profile, well-established marketing teams. And then I went into the internet marketing business and realized there's systems, protocols, and proven strategies that work. And I'm going to go start an agency where we do that stuff. And so I leaned heavily on that experience to start it. I simply thought this could be done better and people would be benefiting from it. So I
so
agree.
it's like, so you're like, I've been in the Fortune 500, and I know how much resources they have and how important it is to the bottom line and to money, right? And let's say that they have a fully armed army, and then you go to this other segment, they don't have any weapons.
Mm-hmm.
I use that analogy actually a lot. So sometimes I'm on stage and I'm like, well, how focused are you guys on? And ladies and gentlemen, how focused are y'all on the dental supply companies? Henry Schein, Patterson, Benko, whoever.
Sure.
And they're like, so they know that. They, and they're like, oh, yeah, we look at that all the time. I'm like, okay, well, what are you paying? And they're like, oh, we got down from 8%, 7%. Like 7%. Is that good? I don't know. Chris doesn't know. We don't know. It
Yeah.
sounds good, right? Okay. So let's say it's 7%. Now, close your eyes for a second and you go, instead of 7%, it's 75%. 75% of every dollar you ever took in was paid out to the dental supply company. How focused would you be now? Now, instead of being a $3 million operation, you're a Fortune 500 company and you have an army of competitive intelligence units, attorneys, consultants, and guys like me, who I affectionately call bozos in a boardroom. And I can say that because I'm a bozo alumni, and I'm not really ashamed of it. So I'm not making fun of you, sensitive clowns. All right. So I'm one too. And so what do we bozos do all day long? Right. So we come up with ways to bring our cost of care down. That's what we do. That's what we get paid to do. And if we can bring it down from 75 cents on the dollar to 74 or 73.2, well, then our stock price goes up with the volume of dollars that we're dealing with. And now we all get bonuses and we can play golf.
Yeah. These are the
And
drivers,
so,
right?
right. Golf pun, no pun intended.
I'm going to jump into question number 2. Ready? PPO negotiations can be time consuming and complex. What are some of the biggest mistakes practices make when negotiating contracts?
Right. So number one, you have to dedicate the time. All right. So there's a lot of time. One of the bigger mistakes that I do see is that you're not looking at it as a whole. And so what I mean by that is you say, okay, well, this payer's up, Cigna is up, right? And so the practice manager calls up Cigna and says, pretty please, may I have an increase? And they go back and forth and play the game and do the dance. And maybe they get an increase. Is that appropriate? Whatever that increase is. Who knows? How do you know? Are you grading them on a curve? How do you know what the market is? Is it 3%? Let's say they were paying you, remember what I was saying, the business overhead is 65. So if they're paying you 40 cents on the dollar and they give you 3%, which is 1 basis point, when you go from 41 cents on the dollar, is that good? You're still losing money, right? And so tip for the listeners here, make sure that you're covering your overhead. But when you're talking about a lot of money, that's, and over years,
Sure.
then,
Sure.
then your other contracts are good and this contract's down here, you should at least grade them on a curve. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that because that's the market. Number two, look at your overhead, right? Number three, look at how much discounting you have to do. So a lot of times, one of the other mistakes that I see a lot is they're like, well, this patient, we have a lot of patients on this crappy plan. Well, like you do. And then I look at the numbers, I'm like, you got $8,000 worth of volume, right? Which is nothing.
Hmm.
So anything under 10,000 is really immaterial, in my professional opinion, in this year, 2025, just in case this gets into a time capsule or something.
Sure.
Anything under 10,000 really doesn't matter.
Right.
But they're like, we have patients, lots of patients. How many?
Yeah.
Because I don't see it in the numbers, and they're like two. And so now, what's happened over the course in this decade, it started happening in 2015. It's been happening in the medical world for some time, but it's called claims repricing. And what that means is there's partners, the competitors will share their networks, and then there's network leasing companies, which are their business models to build a network, credential it, and then lease it out to any of the payers that will give them $1.
Hmm.
And that could be useful. It just depends. So the good news and the bad news is the same. The good news is now you are in network with 30 different payers, companies, insurance carriers. The bad news is now you're in network with 30 different payers. So it depends on, A, do you want to be in network with them? And then how much are you getting reimbursed? If you start layering too many and you have 15 to 20 different fee schedules in that binder on your front desk, you're getting crushed. You're writing off. It's not 30% anymore. Now you're getting 50 cents on the dollar or less. I've seen some crazy stuff. And I'm not a marketing guy. But does
What
that
I'm
make
also,
sense?
yeah, what I'm hearing you say though, to some degree or another, is if you're going to do it yourself, if you're going to go into a negotiation, then what you might be angling for could just be relative to what you're paying. You should know what you should be fighting for. Know your numbers, right? Do your market
Right.
research.
So the only way to do that is to go to the market. And I don't mean Wall Street, but let's say that you only have 8 contracts.
Hmm.
Well, there's 20 to 35 different networks of relevance in most states.
Right.
Thusly, is that a word? Thusly? It is. Thus, how do you know that's going to be that's a good contracted rate if you don't understand the market? And the market, by the way, doesn't give you their best shot right away. They're good at it. This is the long game. You're the practice, then the practice needs to look at it and say, okay, well, what's the value? So let's look at it as 65 cents on the dollar is our goal, right? So if everybody's paying 65 cents on the dollar, but let's say that you get to 70 cents on the dollar. So then go back to that increase that I was talking about from 41 to 42 or whatever I said, 40, 41, something like that. Now, how good does that contract look? It doesn't look good at all, does it? Because that's not relative to the market. It's so
Sure.
low.
Sure.
And so then, like, why do you want those patients in there? Because you're losing money every time you see one.
Sure. Yeah, you got to be a part of the game to sort of know that stuff. I get that. People ask me marketing questions all the time, and I'm like, this is what you do, and this is what you do. And then they maybe even go to a lunch and learn, and like, am I supposed to have backlinks? Am I supposed to have Google reviews? And I'm like, you could do all that stuff if you want to, or you could work with somebody who knows how to accomplish that for you. So yeah, I get why it's difficult, but I also think it's helpful for the practice administrators or practice owners to know what are good questions, right? So that hopefully this show helps them at least know what the right questions are asked someone like you.
And so here's a tip too, like read the contracts. Do not ever throw away the contracts. Do not throw away the fee schedules. These are legal documents. When they send you something in the mail, anything that has dollar signs on it, you better save.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a fee schedule increase, or it could be a decrease, or it could be a mix.
Yeah.
So those come out. It's CDT revises or adds, deletes codes every year. They can amend any of these contracts within 30 days. Tip: dollar signs, hold on to it, look at it. Anything that says effective date of blank, that's an amendment, very generally. And then new patients. new patients. Hey, doc, guess what? Congratulations, we just signed a deal with Secure Life, and it's going to mean lots of new patients, and the claims administrator will be the one to determine how the claims will be adjudicated, and this will mean lots of new patients, and we're very excited about it. New patients are coming your way, so be on the lookout for new patients. Dr. Chris, isn't that great? Thank you so much. We love you. Goodbye. Now, the dangerous part of that was in the middle, and it was all cloaked around new patients. So people know that folks that who does not want new patients. And so the more times you see new patients, the higher your antenna should be, because that's how we sometimes cloak bad news,
Right.
is by using the cloak of new patients.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could mean that you just cannibalized, $50,000 of revenue in your first year.
So question number 3, we're coming up to the end of the show, but I do want to ask you, reimbursement costs rising, right? They don't usually go lower. Is that an accurate?
That's a good question. It's something that we could probably end on, I suppose, but it's kind of a sour note.
I'm more
If you would have
interested.
told,
I'm interested in what strategies can a practice implement to maintain, trying to
well,
offset
let's
some of those raising costs.
back it up a little bit. So if you had said in 2018, Patrick, would fee schedules be reduced? I'd say, well, did the cost of living go down? Is a gallon of milk 99 cents and a gallon of gas 50 cents or something? Because that sounds cool. Oh, no, there's inflation like you've never seen because you were born in '9. And so you weren't, alive during the hyperinflation era of the 70s. And then there was this global epidemic where we all had to wear masks and the kids stayed home from school for 2 years. And then they reduced fees. I would say that sounds crazy, but that's what happened. And that is what's happening. And so, so not only are they not keeping up with inflation, they are actively going the other way. So how can our listeners here mitigate that risk? Number one, you need to stay on top of it. You need to make sure that you are understanding how you're getting paid on your EOBs, and matching it up. And again, so hold on to your contracts, because whatever you put in your practice management software, you cannot dispute a claim because of some, export or, from your practice management software. It just doesn't work. So please hold on to your fees. Insist that they're going to give you a contractual fee schedule. I'm looking at you, some of the schmeltas out in the Midwest. You're not going to give a fee schedule in the year, our Lord 2025. Get real. Anyways, insist on making them give you a fee schedule with a contract. Otherwise, why would you sign a contract without a fee schedule? And then hold on to the fee schedule and make sure that they're paying you that fee schedule. And so this is ABCs. This is what's happening, and a lot of the providers don't know that they're getting paid less because nobody has the time and resources to manually audit their claims. I get it, but this is big money for you, all of you listeners. And so you should at least spot check it and ask your team whether they are spot checking it to determine if you are indeed getting paid what you had agreed to or what you think you should be. So then number 2 is understand your patient acquisition and retention strategy. Now, the specialist is more about acquisition. The top tier dental dentist is also about retention. So how important is insurance to your market, your region? And I know everybody's like, oh, well, you don't understand how it is around here. Everybody goes in network. And I'm like, yeah, I've never heard that before. Tampa, Miami, LA, Kentucky, Tennessee, Denver. I get
Sure.
it. All right. But even if half the people care about network, the other half care very much who puts fingers in their mouth. All right. And so if your market is people with teeth within 3 miles of your practice, you're doing fine.
Let me ask this question. You and I talked a little bit about this on your show. You've been touching on it on this show. You said, read this contract, be aware of this. And I've been doing marketing in the aesthetic specialty medical space for probably 25 years. And whether it's a plastic surgeon, oral surgeon, not so much the med spas. The med spas are usually pretty business savvy, depending on who owns it and who runs it. But there's a general sort of lack of awareness of sort of the contracts and leases and things like that. How common is that?
Very common.
Right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Your plastic surgeons, they don't really have to worry about this as much. Med spas too. So if they're completely out of network, it's more cosmetic.
Sure, they don't have to worry about
but
that at all. But
but
there's
then they're
also
not. They still have like their leases, right?
there's
And
still
so
a
it
lack
comes
of
down
awareness of the contract signed and the agreement and the
right.
commitment.
And
Yeah,
so in general, just as a business owner, like we're busy. I'm busy. You're busy. There's always people tugging at us, right? And so what I found personally helpful is that I like to think that I'm really good at what I do. Right. And I do read the contracts and I am trained at high level negotiation. Does that mean that I negotiate my lease? No, no, it's not my area of expertise. All right. So I go hire the people that are the best at what they do. Best lawyers, the best IT people. Shout out Todd, um, and to Robot Paxton. I get to we don't our business is exclusively referral based, and so we don't really do marketing. But if I had to hire a marketing firm, I would hire the best marketing firm I could. And luckily, I know you now. So this is where I think that sometimes we trip over dollars to pick up a penny. And in these contracts, you're up against folks that they have the resources, but they've been doing it for years and years and years. And so I don't want to use the word rigged, but let's just say that they have a lot more resources than you do, right? And so it's going to, and you have good odds. Said some Vegas games, not really most of them. And I'm trying not to talk negatively about the insurance business. I am saying though that especially in expansion mode and especially with the OMS med spa, I mean, when you're trying to do a bunch of things and you hire somebody who's a very good business operator, but they don't have time to read the contracts and they're not going to be able to do all of this because it's so time consuming. And this is true on almost anything that's specialized. And so if you're talking about 30% of your revenue or more, how much check writing power does that person have?
sure.
Half a million, a million? Tell me, right? And then that's how much money is at stake. And so in your first years of business, you just need to stay in business, right? So you got to do what you got to do. Once you start going, there's no reason for you to take chances like that. And just for me personally, for our clients, whether you hire us or not, you should consult a professional. I'm not going to give myself legal advice either. Lord knows, shout out to my legal team. They send me lots of holiday presents.
I mean, I own multiple businesses and I have multiple leases and multiple landlords, and I've done all, and there were times when I wanted to get started so bad that I just rushed into things. And then when things went south and I was trying to find my way, trying to re-navigate that space, I have to look at why I'm doing it, how I'm doing it, what the long-term consequences of doing it are. But across these industries, I find that it's like I'll have somebody call and be like, we want to stop doing this service and we want to start doing this service. And then I'll think, how there's a clear agreement that we have on like what we're going to be doing and how much it's going to cost, and I've already invested the money in this, right? And I put myself in the shoes of that person, and I think to myself, would I just call my landlord and be like, hey, this is not working the way I wanted it to, like I'm not making enough money at my business, so I don't really want to have this lease anymore. It just doesn't work like that. But in this space, I think it's sometimes a little strange, the lack of awareness of all the agreements that were signed to move into these spaces, or what I was even actually purchasing.
Amen and hallelujah.
Yeah, your experience though, right? Like it's not just
Indeed. I mean, happens. I don't want to say it happens every day, but I can tell you, I can think of three off the top of my head where, I'm talking about our contracts now, where they're like, well, we're just going to do this now. And I'm like, you can do whatever you want as long as you pay what you said you were going to pay.
right.
If you were tired of my compelling rhetoric, okay,
I
well,
hear
I
you.
get it.
I hear you. Enough
But
about that
there's
subject, but it is. I mean, there is something I hope listeners take heed to, is that as a business owner, you have to pay attention to the details, right? Like we're all
right.
in this
And I
together.
can tell you from my own personal experience of contracts, no, it's every time I'm in a hurry, I get hurt. And that's where that's with everything. That's why I like to take my time now. I like to think about decisions. And so that's where, as soon as you start signing your name, and also as a general rule, right, whether I understand that contract or whether I want to read it or not, if I'm going to put my name on something, I'm reading it. Right. And so going back to the PPO contracting, the docs are signing these they have no idea. Not only have they not read it, but they're counting on somebody who in most cases doesn't have a ton of education and experience with contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that was okay to bend me over and spank me. You said, no problem. And you signed your name to it.
I want to see that contract. All right, we're almost out of time. This is the point in the show where I ask you for your Ailm Essential Insight. So one key takeaway that you can leave our listeners with that they might be able to go back to their practice, implement, and solve a problem or make what they're doing a little bit easier.
Diversify your revenue. Understand where your revenue is coming from and where the discount is and why you're doing it. Because there's only 3 reasons. Go back to the beginning of the show. Avoid empty chair time. There's a marketing component to it. 4 referrals. Now, if you're getting paid 50 cents on the dollar on 30% of your patient volume, they start referring, then you can become a victim of your own success. And what I mean by that is that, docs are going to treat them all well, right? And so if you're doing it for referrals, that's a good reason. Then they're going to refer people that where does everybody spend their time? At work. Where'd they get that plant? At work. So now you're getting refer people on sale more and more. So if your volume goes from 20%, 30%, and then it keeps going up, and that's because they're selling more in that market, then you have a problem. Okay. So I would understand your discount and make sure that you're getting the promotional consideration, and B, actionable insight, it would be to make sure you have all of your contracts and fee schedules, because they do change. So if you don't have any from this decade, right, this happens all the time, by the way, Chris, almost every day, you should have them in a PDF and saved somewhere. So make sure you get the fee schedules. It's very simple to ask for them. It takes a little time, right, but you will get them eventually. So get your fee schedules and then take a look at them and see how they compare to each other.
I appreciate you being on the show. Tell our listeners how they can find you.
You can find us at practicequotient.com. That's PRACTICE, and then quotient, QUOTIENT.com. And email at info@practicequotient.com. Our telephone number is area code 470-592-1680. We are headquartered out of Atlanta. We are a national firm, though. We have clients from Acres to LA and Miami to New York. And check us out on the website. We're also AMOS ASI partners. We're endorsed by the Georgia Dental Association. And I think that's it. If you want to find me on Instagram, I'm at Pat_J_O'Rourke. I speak all over the country. You can find me at www.dentalbusinessradio.com too. And you can find you there too, because you have a
that's really
show.
good.
Yeah, podcast.
Thanks for being on the show. I hope our listeners enjoyed it as much as I did. There's a ton of really good information in here. So I know it's going to help them in their practice. And I also know that I get really good feedback from people that are mutual clients about the work that you do for them. So I know that you're a good source for a referral. I appreciate what you do for practices.
I thank them, and I thank you for having me on the show, and our listeners. And if our clients are listening, I really do appreciate it, because that's our whole marketing strategy, is that we do a good job for our clients, and then they tell people that they respect. And so that means a lot to me. It's very fulfilling. So it's why we do this. So I appreciate you having me on the show. It's always a pleasure, Chris.
All right, Patrick. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Please give us a like and subscribe to stay up to date with the Ailm Practice Education Series.